Butch, I guess after kind of put the finishing touches on the team portion of the fall, kind of your overview. How do you think it went for your guys?
It's went good. I look at the whole year. It's been a pretty consistent rhythm for Auburn baseball since January. You know, as soon as we get back from competing in our season, we're right into camps and highest part of our recruiting, straight into a new semester. 24 new players again, and getting to this point close to Thanksgiving and getting to a stopping point. This is a good time for us to take a break. With the 24 new players, I would describe the fall as a slow start because some individuals were performing well, but so many new people. I thought it took 4 of the 6 weeks to get going, and then I think the last 3 weeks and the last 2 weeks of official fall practice, we saw team growth, and now we just, you're either trying to get momentum or keep it, and it took us a month to probably get it. I think the work ethic was good throughout, but finally started seeing some team growth. You know, you lose 5 pitchers in the top 12 rounds, and then you have a consensus top 10 recruiting class, but I thought it took a minute. So, you know, I don't feel like we lost arm talent per se, but we did lose arm experience. There's no other way around that. So those 5 guys being gone and a couple of others, a lot of new pieces, and they finally, I thought, hooked it up. Coach Sean Rock being new with our pitching staff and replaced the Coach Hudson. I just think after that first month, we started seeing some glimpses and growth. And when you start growing on the mound, your entire team starts growing. Still feel like going into the fall, on paper, it said, man, this is really deep catching wise, the deepest we've been, with LaRue coming back, with Dial still being around. Carter Wright wound up being another really good piece, the Iowa Western junior college guy that made it to campus. And then we know it's the deepest outfield we've had since I've been head coach at Auburn. Think about Pierce, and you think about Case and Howell for the 10th year being part of the program. Chris Stanfield, a new player coming in that's so dynamic. Josh Hall, a guy, one of our fastest runners, still being intact. Mikey Bello, a heart and soul type guy. And then Justin Kirby has been an unbelievable addition from Kent State in that corner outfield, kind of a mirror image. Hopefully they play at the level, him and Bobby, where you're like, man, they got 2 guys on the corner that look alike, play alike, good arms, power with the bat. But really good depth, as much as we've had in the outfield. It'll be really competitive out there. For the 3rd year in a row, we're trying to do the combination of taking a second baseman, playing a year, and then moving them to shortstop. We've been successful with Ryan Bliss doing that, Brody Moore doing that, and now we're trying to see if Cole Foster can do that. And it looks like that's the way it'll work out at the end of the fall, but that will create 4 new spots on the infield. And so that's some work that we all still have to do, and Coach Nunemaker leads that group, that we've still got to solidify some things. So I think that rounding out the pitching, getting experience with our pitching, which it may take playing games to be able to draw closer. This team has a chance to get better regardless of where we start. But I think the pitching experience being added as we go along this journey, and I think solidifying our infield are 2 things that came up from the fall that we still have much work to do. It's going to be a heck of a schedule. And this next phase, when we're apart for 50 days, is going to be important. This deployment of them going out and going back home, and for Thanksgiving for a week, and then coming back and getting into exams, and then going back home and training, and then coming back in that preseason before official team practice starts on January 27th. This is where we can make some more gains. So we're putting a lot of emphasis in that category. But it's a good time for us to take a break. We're a healthy ball club. Thankful to announce that today. That's always huge. But the program's been up and consistently running pretty hard, and having our days filled since January. So I do think it's a good time for everybody involved.
When you say healthy program, how's Tommy Sheehan doing? What's the status for the spring?
Yeah, I think we just had a little nerves deal, and we figured out that he'd been going for a long time, coming back from surgery, and really he'd probably, where you have all this over a calendar year with a healthy pitcher giving him time off, and he didn't have the innings pitched, but he's been up and going with his arm through throwing programs and et cetera. So I think he just had the arm just said, hey, you've been going for a really long time here, probably over the last calendar year, and it's time to take a break. So we're confident, we feel good heading in that he'll be full strength right there with everybody. But you're right, we probably took the last 3 weeks from Tommy of fall practice, and so now he's working on week 4 and week 5 of a break. So I think he'll be able to start his arm back up with everybody else. And we believe and are hopeful that he just needed an extended break and has not had one in a long time.
But you mentioned a couple of young guys, but Ike Irish and Stanfield there, but Crotchfeld and Drew Nelson and Murphy. I know you won't really know until you get into the season, but early returns on a really talented class and then what you saw from them this fall.
Yeah, you just don't want to force anything. As the head coach, I'm sitting here looking, but Hayden Murphy is going to do great things for us. But we've had eventual major league pitchers to be slow as a freshman, and then we've had freshman All-American. You want like a Tanner Burns, a Cody Greenhill type deal. There's no doubt these guys fall in line with that type of talent. It's them getting comfortable, them getting innings, and them having success early will dictate that. So they'll get opportunities, is what I do know. But at the same time, we're here to develop everybody. I think we got a pretty good track record with, especially last year, with all 8 guys going in the 20 rounds, and all 8 have never been drafted before. So we feel good about the development. But these guys got to be ready to go to get hitters out. I mean, you look opening weekend, it's Indiana University. You look at week 2, you travel 2,000 miles and play Southern Cal. There's not a lot of lead up in this schedule that we're presenting to our ball club this year. So we got to be ready to go. Drew Nelson started competing at the end of the fall at a high level, was picked high in our little World Series draft. Our little orange and blue World Series seems like kind of trivial to maybe the outsiders or to our fans. I would have to tell you from the inside, it's where things start separating, when you absolutely see every player on that roster picked by their peers. And as a head coach, you sit back and you watch how that plays out. It tells you a lot of what guys and coaches think of each player on the team. Zach Crotchfeld's a 94, 95 mile per hour left-hander. We really haven't had that since I've been here. Secondary stuff, if he rounds that into, if he can get his secondary stuff competitive, he's got a chance to really help us young. So we got a good group of young guys, and then positionally, Irish, Stanfield you mentioned are exceptional players. Ike Irish might be, through fall numbers and looking at everything, might be one of our top 5 hitters, if not our best hitter for fall practice. But again, some guys can perform in the fall and then a little slower in the spring, and then some guys that you think should leave the program and go somewhere else and play college baseball wind up being guys in March and April that you can't live without. So that's, you have to keep a common sense approach to the fall and how it played out. And I'd have to throw Gavin Miller in there at third base. I think that's a guy that, again, we get 5 more weeks before we have a first pitch that's meaningful. It starts the regular season. So all these guys were mentioned, these 5 or 6 guys, 3 pitchers, 3 position players, I think are a huge part of this team, but without question are a huge part of our program long term. And so we're committed to developing them, giving them opportunities. At the end of the day, the players will make the lineup out, but those 6 guys are going to be huge pieces to our program.
When we saw you before fall ball, you kind of mentioned the same thing with the infield, that there was a lot to figure out. And, I did want to ask, I guess, just maybe what you feel like you guys did kind of figure out about the infield through fall ball, even if there's still some stuff to dissect.
Yeah, we got to measure to this club and to where it's at, and it's hard though. Human nature wants to measure to Brody Moore making 4 errors at shortstop, the best shortstop I've ever had played on a team I've been on in 2 decades in the SEC. So we got to be fair. You have the SEC Player of the Year at first base, so we have to just meet them where they're at. I think y'all have heard me for years going into year 8, and I don't think I'm going to change now. It's just dominating the routine play is a great starting point. We still can do that at a higher level, more consistent every day. And again, I'm glad we got the 5 weeks, but Cole Foster's as athletic of a shortstop as we've had, and I'm telling you, we've had great ones. The Bliss and the Moore the last few years has been incredible watching them play infield. Cole's got to keep working. Caden Green's a new junior college player that can absolutely play second base. Brody Moss is a guy that was in the program. Now he's in his 2nd year, a left-handed bat, athletic as the day is long. You want to see somebody punch out and say, this is my job. I got second, guys. We're still waiting on that, and you know, we can play more than one guy at these positions, but we're still looking for somebody. They're competing well against one another, but we're looking for dominating, consistent plays and seeing it consistently, and it would be nice to see somebody jump off the page and get after it. Bryson Ware, how athletic is Bryson Ware that he was a defensive replacement late in the year and in the postseason, was a junior college shortstop 2 years ago when he'd come to the program and has moved back into third base. Gavin Miller, I just bragged about, you know, is a guy that absolutely, the players think a lot of Gavin. Our fall evaluations, the players really believe in Gavin Miller. He had 2 or 3 weeks that were really good, maybe a little slow to start and maybe a little slow to finish, but he did something there in the middle 3 weeks that grabbed the attention and respect of our ball club. He's not sped up, he's comfortable, he can have a good bat. He had a couple opposite field home runs and just grabbed some respect from our team. And then, you know, Cooper McMurray is a first baseman from Kansas that's played some, but still has some years in front of him. He handled himself well at first base. Cam Hill has been in the program now for 3 years. You know, Ryan Giles, a catcher that can move around and do some things. So those are the guys. Those are the guys that we mentioned. Mason Land's probably another one. It's a veteran. It's been here more than 1 year. It's kind of like the Brody Moss and the Caden Green. They're fighting at second base primarily. So we have enough bodies. We have enough guys that can do the job. It's who can be the most consistent and who will really come back. Who's going to work these 50 days to be the most ready when we get back? But I would think if Coach Nunemaker was standing here and answering the question, I think he would say that there's some fundamental development that needs to continue to happen with, you know, catching the ball, then centering it to create consistently and right to left, left to target, throwing with intention, missing on the outfield side of the bag when you throw to first instead of the home side where you're not throwing into a runner of the baseline. Those things can continue to get better and maybe slightly off the pace of where we were at this stage the last 2 or 3 years.
How did Nate LaRue do this fall, particularly at the plate, and what do you think about his new bat stance?
He had 2 hits last fall, so he hit 450 this year. He did really good.
Yeah.
He had a couple of games where he had multiple home runs. So, you know, hit for the most average. Had a chance to go play professional baseball. You know, I'm excited when he decided to come back, because if you're going to make a good college baseball team, you got to be good close to home plate, and that does start with catcher, and that is the next piece is pitching. So, you know, our success is going to be being good close to home plate, which I think we're as good and as deep as we've been. And then the pitching's absolutely just like everything, just like quarterback play for a college football team. You know, pitching is going to do everything to set the course of how successful we're going to be. But I think the biggest thing, and it's saying a lot if I'm going to put this ahead of how much growth he's shown offensively. He's leading our team. He's one of our legacy guys for the first time in his career, and is leading. I think some of our growth is absolutely Coach Schoenrock, who's in his 39th year of coaching, being a head coach or coaching pitchers at the D1 level. But I give Nate LaRue a lot of credit. He has gone from like trying to find his own way, get himself in the lineup, probably coming out of Arlington, that trip last year, and then solidifying himself, to now he's coaching other players. And I'm like, those are the aha moments for me where I'm like, I know this guy's arrived. But he's developed offensively. had the same ability to catch that did a great job last year. He's still throwing runners out, but he's leading at a higher level and had a more complete offensive fall for us. I'm excited about Nate LaRue. I would think that going into the season, for me, if he can keep working in this next phase and he stays true to himself this fall, brings it back out to begin preparation for the season when we get back together, I think he's about as good as his position as anybody in America.
Going from Tim Hudson to Darren Schoenrock, what's that transition been like? You know, guys with completely different backgrounds, different life experiences, and different ways of doing things.
Yeah, I think it's great for players, especially returners, because they got somebody that threw Game 7 of a World Series in 2014. They got a great example of just talking a game. A guy that played in the big leagues for 17 years. I miss him. I miss him in the office in the morning, because you can imagine the stories if you love the game, the conversations that you have. So I miss that. Not that Rock's no fun to talk to, but
Not the same kind of story.
it's the different stories. It's for me, it's been a blessing because he was my pitching coach in college. Before I leave Tim, the one other thing I'll say about him is our players also got to see an example of a husband and a father. They got to see an example of an Auburn man from the standpoint of, like, he didn't have to do this for 3 years. He didn't have to do it for one day. But he absolutely worked like he was full-time on the payroll and everything. Tim and Kim have given more back to Auburn than anybody I know of in my time. And for him to come back and give his program, and instead of showing appreciation by a gift or showing appreciation by saying thank you, which is absolutely enough, he absolutely come put his cleats on the field for 3 years to help our program. I'll never forget it. And for him now to go across town and coach at Lee Scott Academy and get to coach Kate his senior year because of all that time he's missed with his family, what an example he is showing our players of what it's supposed to look like and how you're supposed to act. And there are things that are bigger than ball. Tim Hudson, what he's done the last 3 years is really hard to put into words how positive I feel about it. But Coach Schoenrock, I think his strengths are, I mean, this guy's had a Cy Young Award winner. He's had, some of the best closers in the game. He's had multiple professionals, 3 stops in the Southeastern Conference as a pitching coach, head coach at Memphis the last 18 years. He's a teacher. So you go from big league stories to one of the best teachers that I think they're out there. When you see a schedule each week of what it's put out there, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And seeing the one-on-one attention, seeing the meetings, seeing the breaking down of video, seeing the suggestions, allowing a player to play. He's coached long enough. What I call a veteran coach that's worth their salt is when they don't grab somebody immediately and try to change them. When I see a coach that has enough confidence in himself, enough experience to allow a player to go out and show him for a few weeks what he's got, what he's doing, then you go make adjustments. I saw that happen in this first semester with Coach Rock, and then we absolutely, as he observed and then jumped in and made adjustments, we started seeing growth with our pitching staff. So, of course, I trust him with my whole heart. He wouldn't be here, but we go way back, and I think he's when you're in one place for 18 years and you've been leading a program, and then to go back to your roots of being a pitching coach, I think I've seen a flame kindled in him. He's really enjoyed this process of not having to do all the things like this that I have to do, that he's had to do all these years, to just be with our players. He's done an amazing job of that. But, and we go from one of the best, a guy that's on the Hall of Fame ballot, and then we go to a college teacher that is absolutely a marksman at his craft. If you've been here for a couple of years and you've got both of those pieces from a pitch and development standpoint, I think it'll pay dividends for like a Chase also, a Joseph Gonzalez. I think those guys are absolutely going to benefit from being touched by both men.
I don't know if you mentioned him, but Brody Wortham also in the mix at third.
Yes, and I should have mentioned him. I would say offensively, he wound up getting some of our biggest hits of the entire fall. Also experience. Yeah, that's just an oversight on my part. Brody's played great. Come from West Georgia. Right-handed bat, and it sounds like from his coaches there, I just remember after he got 2 or 3 big hits and moments, those coaches, they said, he's going to get big hits. And hey, that's our world, is timely hitting at this level. And he's continued to do that. He's performed well in our outside competition games. So whenever the stakes got a little higher, his bat played in those moments. And, you know, and it's been low night. When you think about coming from one level to another, when you think about average velocity that's competed against, and a couple of balls he's turned on have been north of 90 miles per hour, and he's handled them in some big moments. So a little more consistently, like I met with every player this week, every player. So it's been a long week from that standpoint, but just continuing to grow. He's played everywhere on the infield. We think he's like a defensive replacement at first, but he can help this ball club if he really can dig in at third base with his experience. So we feel like he's got some defensive work to do at third base. I agree. Brody agrees with that. So we'll keep digging in on that. But his bat played so good that we absolutely got to find a way to use him. And the more he gets comfortable and keeps growing at third base, because he hadn't played a ton of it, it's going to be good. But we know he can go over, and I think most recently he's played full season at first base, and he might be our best defensive first baseman if we opt to try to do something defensively with the lead late in ball games. We thought we would have to do that last year with Sonny, and he buttoned it up pretty good and was able to stay there for full games. But that's an omission on my part, not mentioning Brody Wortham.
Your new boss is your old boss.
Yes.
Have you had a chance to reconnect? I know he's probably got maybe one item on the agenda that he's got to knock out first.
Yeah, and full disclosure, that one item has kept him from I know he was out at Equestrian a while ago. I've seen him at the basketball games and everywhere in between. And but I think this one item is probably right where his focus should be. So I look forward to seeing my dugout mate. I don't know him as much as an AD, but seven years in a dugout. I think it's been stated how excited I am, how much confidence, how much belief I have in John with his acumen of understanding the industry, the business. Absolutely, I've never met anybody more competitive being in a dugout with him, pursuing championships with him. He's going to do an amazing job, and I am not surprised that he's absolutely dove in, knowing what the most important thing is. His first step for leading Auburn is this football search. So yeah, I look forward to seeing him. I haven't got to spend any time with him yet because of him trying to hit the ground running.
All right, thank you, Coach.